Hi everyone, welcome to a brief further food for thought as I just try and take a moment to help us reflect a bit out of the talk that I gave on Sunday. And I guess the first thing I'd like to say is if you haven't listened to that, I'd really encourage you to do that. I think there's a number of things that I say there that it would be helpful that you've heard before trying to have discussions in life groups, etc. So first and foremost, can I encourage you to listen to that talk? You can obviously watch it online and go to our YouTube channel. But I also want to just encourage you specifically as life groups to think about a few specific questions out of what I shared. I talked about what I headed recovery and discovery, and the fact that we are obviously as a church and as individuals potentially entering into a slightly different season. We've gone through an extreme season over the last year and a bit. And out of that, there is things to recover from and there's things to discover and step into. And I want to encourage us to try and make the most of that and do that as much as we can. And so there's a few questions that I want to encourage you to think about. And the first one is this, just to take some time to reflect on what are the lessons that you have learned through this season and be able to share. No doubt, we've had a number of challenges, but also there've been a number of things that God will have taught us through this season. And it'd be great to share what the things you think you've learnt over this season as you look back over the last year and a bit. Secondly, to ask the question, what have you gone through that needs time for processing and healing? What have you gone through that needs time for processing and healing? And I'm assuming that you feel that in your life group it's a relatively safe space, a place where you can share openly, and to actually take some time together to reflect a little bit. Not just to move on, but to take that time for reflection and go, what is it that I've gone through that I may need time to give myself to processing properly and to find healing for? And of course, as you do that, remember, as I said on Sunday, that the very best place to process stuff, the very best place to find healing is in the presence of God. And he wants to help us to do that. He wants to help us to ask good questions. He doesn't want us to bury stuff and hide stuff. He wants us to bring stuff to the surface. And in your life groups, there's an opportunity to help one another to do that. And as you do that, you might want to also just ask and consider whether there are fears or strongholds that have grown up during this time that need to be dealt with. I'm aware that for a number of people, they would say that, life over this season has shrunk, and it's like, everything's become restricted, and for all sorts of reasons, there's lots of limitations that have been placed on us. And if we're not careful, we can, when we don't need to, begin to keep living in those restrictions and those limitations. And I've talked to some people who have found the thought of stepping out and maybe coming to a meeting really quite intimidating. And it's almost like they have to take a step of faith because they're aware that there's like a stronghold and a fear that's in danger of beginning to take hold. And I would be good just to take some time to together and as individuals think about how there's some strongholds that have grown up in your life. Are there some unhealthy fears that have taken a wrong hold that need to be broken and dealt with, that you need to make a conscious effort to break through, as it were, and not to keep living so that you end up getting limited in the wrong ways? And then, having processed that a little bit, I also think this is a season for us to be discovering new things, to be stepping into the purposes of God in fresh ways and playing our part in the body of Christ. And this is a time to consider that and think about how we can best do that. So I want to encourage you as a group to read 3 passages and just reflect a little bit on what you learn from them. It's John 13, 12 to 17, and then Romans 12, 1 to 8, and Ephesians 4, 7 to 16. That's John 13, 12 to 17, Romans 12, 1 to 8, and Ephesians 4, 7 to 16. I'd really encourage you to, as a life group, read those passages and just take some time. What are the lessons that come from that? What are the things we can learn from those passages? And then to ask the question, what does serving within the body of Christ and serving the purposes of God look like for us in this coming season? What does it look like for you as an individual? How are you going to play your part in the body of Christ as God intends you to? How are you going to serve his purposes he intends you to? There's no greater privilege than serving the living God. And we want to help one another step into his purposes, find our place. And as life groups, we can play a part in helping one another to do that. So I trust you have a really good time just reflecting on that, taking some time to reflect on the things you've gone through, the things that you might need healing from, and also looking forward and trying to see how you could be best positioned to step into serving the purposes of God in the best possible way. God bless. See you soon.